Welcome to a special edition of Making a Meal of It, the podcast for eaters of all appetites who want to reimagine and reinvigorate their relationships with food, food culture, and food systems. I'm David Santo, and this bonus episode is a bit of a departure from the regular format. Over the past week, I've been spending time with a group of about 40 international food systems researchers, practitioners, and activists who all came to Montreal for the kickoff meeting of a 7-year project focusing on sustainable regional food systems. The project is called the Flow Partnership, and it involves people from Mexico, Brazil, Kenya, Australia, and Canada, all working on different food production, policy, consumption, and knowledge-sharing initiatives. With so many experts in one place, it seemed like a really great opportunity to learn a little bit more about what's going on around the world in terms of food, food culture, and the challenges facing food systems in different places. Next week, we return to the usual format. But for now, here is the sound of a whole lot of food folks trying to figure out a better future for us. For this episode, I asked a handful of these high-level researchers some relatively straightforward questions. The Flow Partnership itself is actually focused on some very innovative theories of change and research methodologies and knowledge mobilization approaches, and over the course of the next few years, the team will be putting them to the test while also creating on-the-ground change. If you want to know more, check out the Flow website at flowpartnership.org. Over time, lots of research findings will be published there, but for now, just know that the main objective of the research is to understand how to scale up food sustainability efforts from local and community-level projects, and to make what's already working transform food systems at the broader level and with more positive impacts for a lot more people. These short conversations were recorded on-site at Dawson College in Montreal, either between meeting sessions, during our lunch breaks, or after touring some of the amazing and just inspiring food and sustainability projects that our host, Annalisa Aunio, shared with us. So my apologies for the sound quality in some cases. It turns out that field recording just ain't my technical specialty. And if a set of short conversations with international food experts just aren't what you're into listening to today, check back in a week, when I'll return to the usual format with a regular episode of Making a Meal of It. So Alison, thank you for joining me on the podcast. Can you tell me what we're doing here, who you are, and why we've all assembled to talk about food systems?
Yeah, my name is Alison Blay-Palmer, and I'm the UNESCO Chair in Food, Biodiversity, and Sustainability Studies and a professor at Wilfrid Laurier University in the Department of Geography and Environmental Studies. And the reason that we're all gathered here in Montreal is to launch the Flow project. And Flow stands for Food Learning and Growing, and it's a partnership that brings together 8 different regions around the world. And we're here to figure out how to capture the transformative dimensions of different parts of the food system. So the food system right now is dominated by industrial globalized pressures, and it's contributing significantly to climate change, biodiversity loss, degraded environmental conditions, and is actually unable to feed the world. So there's about 3 billion people in the world that can't afford a healthy diet. So when we take all of those factors together, we really need to find a solution, and we need to understand what's going on in the world of the alternative food system. And that's really what this grant is meant to do, is to capture those good news stories, to track and monitor the change over 5 years in the 8 regions. So we're working in Australia and in Brazil, as well as Mexico and Kenya. And in Canada, we have 4 locations, one in the Northwest Territories, one in Vancouver, one in Montreal, and also one near Ottawa.
Wow, it sounds like a very expansive and extensive project. How long is this partnership going to last?
We're already into year 1, and we have 6 years left. So it's really a great opportunity to track the change over time, which is actually not something that's ever been done before. So that's one of the unique features of this project is the longitudinal nature of figuring out what's going on. And then in addition to collecting the data, telling the stories that really animates that data and lets people understand why what's happening is important and how it's happening. So the successes can be emulated and replicated as much as possible.
And so, as I understand it, we're focusing less on specific local success stories and good news stories, but more on sort of this middle scale of food systems, which we're calling regional for now, but it means bigger than a small town and smaller than a country. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, David. It's really important for us to figure out where the change can happen. We can take a whole bunch of individual projects on the ground and put them together, but that's not going to amp up to the transformative change that we need. And it's really evident from a lot of work that's happened so far that we can do that at the regional scale. That's the sweet spot for change.
All right. Well, let that sweet spot be shared by many. Thanks so much.
My name is Nicole Claasen. I am from Germany, from a city called Bonn. And I'm a policy advisor to our Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development on all matters related to food.
What's one of your favorite aspects of the food culture from your home place?
I think Germany is very well known for its awesome bread. And we have very good cheese as well. So for me, German food culture is based on a variety of bread and cheese. But considering the broader food system, what I really appreciate that it caters for many people's needs. It's very easy to find plant-based diets or animal-based diets. So whatever you prefer, you can actually have rather easy access to it. That's a privilege.
So there's a very strong historical food tradition, but also a lot of adaptation to the contemporary realities that there's diversity in our diets.
Exactly.
Thinking about food systems again, what do you think is one of the main challenges that is facing the people of Germany right now?
One of the main challenges I see is that people are very far away from the origin of food. The way we consume or what we have access to is all based on markets and supermarkets. Yes, we do have a lot of farmers markets still. However, they are often very highly priced and not affordable for many lower income households. But most of the food we get is from supermarkets. And it worries me because many people, perhaps also including many children, don't have an idea anymore what real wholesome food means. That necessarily is not packaged, is not processed, is not nicely advertised. So I think there's a very big challenge in our food system coming back to what really is food.
So if you had a magic German breadstick that you could wave in the air and create instant change, what would be one thing about food that you would magically change?
It would be school health and nutrition programs. And I don't mean only school meals or school gardens. I mean programs in schools that address how you grow food, how you prepare food, how you take care of your health. I think education, awareness of our food system, of where foods come from, is something we should not neglect in everywhere, but also in Germany in our school curriculum, hoping that future generations can value food more than it's currently been the case.
My name is Kevin Morgan. I'm Professor of Governance and Development at Cardiff University, and I'm mainly engaged in research projects on sustainable development in various forms, including sustainable food systems.
So what is one of your favorite aspects of the food culture in Wales?
A general societal and political aspiration to create a more sustainable food system, whatever that means for different people. And that creates opportunities as well as challenges. But it's a new phase, I would say, in the societal system.
So it seems like the Welsh society is actually very progressive in terms of thinking about not just food, but food systems.
I think you could say that. We've got a very, very innovative piece of legislation by the Welsh Parliament called the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which is the first time any government in Europe has ever put sustainable development in its political constitution. And that creates new opportunities for us to do progressive policies like universal free school meals. It's a piece of top-down legislation creating opportunities for rolling out universal free school meals to all primary school children. This has been an ambition of mine for many, many years.
So if you would name one main challenge to food systems in Wales, what would it be?
I wish there were just one challenge, but there's multiple challenges, as there are in all our countries, of course. I'd say the biggest single challenge that I've faced in my work is the disconnect between the supply and demand. That is to say, the kind of products that we know are going to be in demand, more fruit and vegetables, for example, less red meat and dairy. That's clear where the society is going. But we are a country where our agriculture is specialised in red meat and dairy. Therefore, that's a big, big challenge.
As a final word, do you have a favourite expression in Welsh that is related to food?
My favourite saying of all in Welsh, and roughly translated, would be, he who would be a leader, let him be a bridge. That sums up a lot of Welsh social values.
And how is that actually said in Welsh?
Ar forbid ben bront.
Love it. Thank you very much.
My name is Anne-Marie Aubert. I'm from here in Montreal, and I'm the coordinator of Montreal's Food Policy Council, also known as the Conseil du système alimentaire montréalais.
What would you say one of your favorite aspects of the food culture in Montreal is?
I think for me it's really the diversity. You can find something from every part of the world and also a lot of great products from right around here. So it's really that aspect of being able to discover new flavors, new foods, seeing all different kinds of traditions represented.
What would you say is one of the main challenges that food systems here are facing?
Well, I think it's the fact that many people don't have that economic access to the great food that is available in our city. People are just struggling right now to make ends meet with the crisis of housing. Also makes things a lot harder. So while there's plenty of good food that seems to be available, unfortunately it's not available for everybody because they don't have the means to access it.
So if you had a magic wand or a magic bagel, then you could wave it in the air and make something change in food systems here, what would it be?
Well, we do have some of these existing projects, so I would generalize them, where when you go to pay for your food, you pay based on what you can afford. So I guess my dream would be that anywhere you go, whether you're in an institution, in a school cafeteria, in a restaurant, or at the grocery store, you can choose the food that's going to make you healthy, that's going to be delicious and appropriate, aligned with your values, and you're going to be able to pay whatever you can afford to get that food.
That sounds pretty magic. Do you have a favorite food expression in Québécois French?
Well, I don't know if it's specifically Québécois, but I like to say l'appétit vient en mangeant. Once you get a little taste of something, it just makes you curious to learn more and more.
Yeah, maybe a little taste of food justice would make us want to have a lot more food justice in the world.
I think that's another good way of thinking about it.
So, Laura, would you tell us your name, where you're from, and what it is that you do there?
Bueno, yo soy Laura Gómez Tovar, trabajo en la Universidad Autónoma Chapingo y nací en el estado de Veracruz, en una comunidad chiquita que se llama en el norte del estado.
What is one of your favorite aspects of the food culture in Veracruz?
Pues sobre todo que tenemos diferentes tipos de maíces y hacemos tortillas al momento, se calientan, las comes calientitas, te puedes comer 10 comidas, 10 tortillas.
What would you say is one of the main challenges facing food systems in Mexico or in Veracruz State?
Tenemos mucha influencia del maíz que llega de Estados Unidos, que está contaminado genéticamente modificado y está sustituyendo nuestro maíz nativo y toda la cultura que hay alrededor de los maíces.
So if you had a magic tortilla press that you could wave in the air and change one thing about food in your home place, what would that be?
Tener los suficientes recursos para seguir trabajando las 50 y tantas variedades de razas de maíz que tenemos en el país y mantenerlas vivas a través de la cultura, de la comida.
And so what would be one of your favorite expressions about food in Mexican Spanish?
Vamos a comer.
Gracias.
De nada.
My name is Samuel Gudu. I'm from Kenya. And in Kenya, I teach at the university and also an administrator. I'm the CEO, the Vice Chancellor of Rongo University.
That's Rongo University in Migori?
Yes, Rongo University is a public university located in Migori County.
And what's one of your favorite aspects of food in Migori County?
Looking at traditional food, the way small-scale farmers produce food and how that food flows throughout the county of Migori.
And what kind of traditional foods are produced and eaten?
We have 42 different cultures in Kenya, and each of those different groups have got specific preference for the type of African dish they like. And therefore, for me, coming from one of those ethnic groups, I like eating fish, and that is our tradition because we live along Lake Victoria. There is a great diversity of foods in Kenya, and this is because of the diversity of people and cultures in the country.
What's one of the main challenges that's currently facing the work that you do with regard to food systems?
The major challenge with the food systems is the production aspects of food. Because of climate change, sometimes there is crop failure, but sometimes we have got glut. We produce more than we need, and a good amount of that, when we produce a lot, goes to wastage because the marketing situation is not very efficient. When you produce more, the prices go down, and therefore farmers lose the crop through wastage. And I think the biggest challenge is to ensure that we produce and we have got good market, good prices that would stimulate production.
If you could change one thing, what would that one thing be?
I think the best thing to do for the food county in Migori is to ensure that the market system is very functional, because most of the county is capable of producing food, but farmers are discouraged because of the poor marketing system. And therefore, if I stood in a position where I could be able to dictate or convince everybody, then I would make sure that the marketing system is excellent and encourages production.
So to take all that great diversity and make sure it gets into the mouths and bodies of people.
Yes, that's what I would exactly do.
Do you have a favorite expression related to food that you say in Kenya?
Yes. We say a hungry person is annoyed all the time.
That's great. Well, let us all never be annoyed again.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Chatura, would you give us your name, where you're from, and what you do?
My name is Chatura Pulasinghage. I'm from Sri Lanka, and right now I'm doing my PhD at Laurier University, Department of Geography and Environment Studies.
What's one of your favorite aspects of the food culture from Sri Lanka?
Sri Lanka has a heritage of more than many thousands of years, and I think the biggest part of our food culture is the diversity that we have. But Sri Lanka is predominantly known to the world because of the spices that we have. These things are being traded many years ago, and I think that's the biggest component that Sri Lanka is known for, the Sri Lankan spices.
What's one of the major food system challenges that you're interested in studying or interested in fixing, whether in Sri Lanka or elsewhere?
I think the biggest challenge to our country at the moment has been how we go back to our roots. Because throughout the history, due to many reasons, that we have lost the way that we looked at how food is being produced and consumed and being used as a necessity for human life. And right now we are struggling to go back from this industrial dominated food system to sustainable food systems. And that's the most dominant question at the moment.
So if you could wave a magic wand in the air or maybe a magic cinnamon stick, what would be the one thing that you would change instantly if you could with regard to Sri Lankan food systems?
So what we have tried before is from a top-down approach. We started changing policies and then ask people to change. But I think what we have to do is you have to change from people and then allow it to change policies. So for me, if I have a magic wand, I would change how people view food. It should be viewed as something that you can build communities, resilience, bring people together. And I would change that.
And last question, of course, what is one of your favorite expressions with regard to food, either from Sri Lanka or from anywhere in the world? You've been around the world a lot, so you've presumably heard a lot of different food expressions.
This is pretty common to South Asia. So when South Asians are very known for their hospitality. So if you ever visit Sri Lanka or any South Asian country, we're going to offer you food. So make sure that you consume, because I'm pretty sure that's the best dish that you're going to ever have.
Sounds like thank you is one of the great terms that we can share about food. Thanks so much.
No worries. Thanks.
My name is Lillith Brook. I'm from Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, and I work in agriculture and commercial fisheries with the territorial government.
So what's one of your favorite aspects of the food culture from the Northwest Territories?
What I love about the food culture in the north and around Yellowknife is that I am able to provide an opportunity for my family to learn about where food comes from, to learn how to identify plants and animals that they can eat, and to be able to see how food changes throughout the seasons.
So you're right there. The food is right there. You were right there, and the sort of non-distance from nature, as it were, that allows you to have all that access.
Yeah, and that it's accessible as a food source to the extent you want it to be, and that it's a learning landscape for my kids. And they know when and where to harvest berries. They know when and where to get a ptarmigan or a grouse or anything like that.
Unlike a lot of kids in the South who know where to get it, but that's called the grocery store. So what's one of the main challenges facing food systems in the North or in the Northwest Territories in particular?
Well, when I think about challenges for us in the North, I think of dropping water levels and decreasing ice road times, increasing risk of wildfire. There's a lot that's threatening the stability of our food system. And those are the biggest challenges right now. Rising prices.
So all sorts of things related to, well, certainly climate change, but then also the distances between people and spaces and towns and distribution routes in the North.
That's right.
All right, imagining then that you had all the power in the world, or maybe a magic carrot to wave around in the air and change some aspect of the food systems where you are, what would that be?
If I could wave the wand, I would like to see young people think that there's an opportunity for them to engage in the food system, to see themselves in the food system.
And so what would that look like with young people engaged more in the food system in the North?
I would like young people to think that growing or processing, even cooking food is a potential career opportunity and just an important skill for them to learn.
Do you have a favorite food expression from the Northwest Territories? Is there a favorite food expression from your own life?
Well, right now, spring of 2024, we are anticipating a bit of a morel mushroom boom. And a favorite expression that has been shared with me recently was, in preparing for that morel harvest frenzy, is thanks for your morel support.
Well, thank you for this conversation. It's been great.
Thank you, David.
Donc, Elodie, peux-tu nous dire ton nom, d'où tu viens et ce que tu fais là-bas?
Alors, je suis Elodie Valette, je viens de France, d'une ville qui s'appelle Montpellier, dans le sud de la France, et je suis chercheuse, je suis géographe dans un organisme de recherche qui travaille sur des questions agricoles et alimentaires dans les pays en développement.
Et peux-tu nous nommer un de tes aspects préférés de la culture alimentaire à Montpellier?
Alors, il y a une espèce de cliché sur les Français, mais je suis sûre qu'il n'est pas spécifique aux Français, où on dit que on est une des populations qui parlent d'alimentation pendant qu'on mange. Mais c'est quelque chose qui est sans doute vrai pour d'autres pays, d'autres cultures, mais c'est quelque chose que je fais beaucoup et que j'apprécie particulièrement.
Et c'est quoi donc un des défis les plus importants quant au système alimentaire où tu vis?
Je dirais qu'aujourd'hui, ce qui me préoccupe peut-être moi le plus, c'est la précarité alimentaire qui est croissante et le nombre de personnes qui se retrouvent en difficulté pour obtenir et accéder, en tout cas accéder à une alimentation qu'on pourrait dire saine, suffisante en quantité, en qualité, en diversité.
Et donc si tu avais une baguette magique ou peut-être une carotte magique pour changer le monde avec la magie, avec une incantation spécifique, ce serait quoi ce défi que tu aimerais changer?
Je pourrais répondre que je me débrouillerais pour changer toute forme d'alimentation en pâte d'amande ou en saucisson, mais je vais essayer de répondre un peu plus sérieusement. Je pense qu'effectivement, si j'avais une carotte magique, je me débrouillerais pour que chacun ou chacune puisse avoir accès à l'alimentation qu'il souhaite, en quantité, en qualité, et une alimentation qui soit adaptée aux besoins, aux envies de chacun et chacune.
Et est-ce qu'il y a une expression liée à l'alimentation que tu aimes en particulier de ta région?
Encore. Donne-moi encore. Ou est-ce qu'il en reste? Voilà, c'est ça qui me plaît.
C'est parfait.
Qui me plaît
et si la carotte est magique, il en reste toujours.
Il en reste toujours un petit peu.
Merci beaucoup.
I'm Rachel Carey, and I'm a senior lecturer in food systems at the University of Melbourne in Melbourne, Australia, in Southeast Australia. And what do I do there? Well, I work in food systems, and that means that I look at everything that happens from the farm to the fork in getting our food to us. I investigate that, and I do research into how food gets to people and all the issues associated with that, and I teach in that area as well.
And so what is one of your favorite aspects of the food culture in Melbourne or in Victoria or in Australia?
I could talk about this for a long time because there are so many things that I love about it, but I would say that the best aspect of Melbourne's food culture, and it is a really foodie city, is just the quality of the fresh produce that comes from around the city is incredible. And that's partly because we still have quite a significant food bowl around the city that actually produces almost half of the vegetables that are produced in the state come from that food bowl just within 100 kilometres of Melbourne. And we also have this Mediterranean style climate that means that food is produced for a long period of the year. We have very long growing seasons. It just means that the quality of the food is so good that it really, I think, significantly contributes to this incredible foodie culture that we have in the city. And another thing I'd say just is the diversity of the food that's available in Melbourne. Australia is very much of a migrant country and very diverse culture and just incredible array of food.
And so what's one of the main challenges then that you and the people you work with are facing in terms of food systems in and around Melbourne?
Well, one of the main challenges that we're facing, and I guess it's quite similar in other parts of the world as well, is just the impacts of shocks and stresses, but especially local climate-related shocks. And in the part of the world that we are, it's one of the most fire-prone places in the world. So we have significant bushfires. We call them bushfires, forest fires, which are really affecting food production. Flooding, drought. So we had a 13-year millennium drought at one point that really reduced the amount of water that was available for food and had a significant impact on food prices. So between 2005 2007, food prices increased 12% in Australia, but fresh vegetable prices increased around 33% during that 2-year period, and fresh fruit prices increased 43%. That just gives you an idea about what impact lack of water and drought and climate change can have.
We have been talking about food prices a great deal here in Canada, but in North America in general and around the world. And clearly you've already been experiencing that in many ways for a very long time, and largely because of climate change, as I understand it.
That's absolutely right. We've been feeling the effects of multiple different types of shocks and stresses. So we had, in where I live, we go from one extreme to the other in terms of water. So after a significant 13-year drought, now we've had 3 wet years where we're experiencing flooding. And flooding is actually cutting off the major food transportation routes into some cities. Australia has very isolated cities around the coast. They're a long way from anywhere. And flooding is actually cutting off food supply supplies to some cities at certain times. There's a lot of things that we're dealing with. In relation to those local shocks, also global shocks and stresses, of course, like everywhere else, the COVID-19 pandemic, geopolitical issues, but I'd say it's really those local climate-related issues that are affecting our food system at the moment.
So I maybe guess the answer, but if you had a magic wand that you could wave in the air and change one thing right now, very quickly, no questions asked, about food systems, what would that be?
So many things, but it's actually quite easy for me at the moment. In terms of one thing, it would be for governments to legislate the human right to food nationally and at state level. And the issue there's a couple of issues. One is that within government, there's no accountability in government at the moment for whether people have sufficient access to fresh, healthy food. So most of the policy focus at the moment is just on producing more food, not on whether or not people have access to that food. Access to adequate food is, of course, a fundamental human right. And so government certainly needs to be ensuring that people do have access to sufficient food and realising that right for people. But the problem we have is that we can't hold government to account because it hasn't been legislated. And so that's the one thing I would do.
Alakazam, let it be.
Absolutely.
So do you have a favorite food expression, either Australian or otherwise?
Well, I guess there's a couple of local words that we have just for food itself that are, quite interesting. So one is just tucker. So sometimes we refer to food as tucker. And we also refer to food as grub sometimes. So, give me some grub, I'm going to get some grub.
Well, they're very evocative of, it's just something that I need right now in my stomach. Very basic, very honest.
Absolutely. And we love to shorten words as well, right? So things like tucker and grub. They're typically Aussie shortened words.
So, Victor, would you please tell us your name, where you come from, and what you do?
My full name is Victor Gerardo Martinez Perez. It's a Latin American full name. So the short answer is I'm Mexican, but for different reasons, mostly work and study, I have lived in 6 different countries for long periods of time. So Spain, the US, Italy, UK, Canada, and obviously Mexico.
And what do you do what have you been doing in all those places?
So lots of things. I'm a designer. I started as a car designer. Then I became independent design consultant, and then a teacher, and then a researcher. And now I'm fully concentrated to being teacher and researcher at Kwantlen Polytechnic University in Vancouver, British Columbia.
And so your work now concerns food systems. Can you quickly draw the line between car design and food systems?
Well, it's not exactly a straightforward line, but it's not the food that is exactly my focus, it's the systems part. So since I started my career 20-something years ago, I was very interested in sustainability. And, through books and readings and comments, chats with people all over, I discovered systems thinking and complexity theory, and I just completely fell in love with it. And I've been using concepts that I've been learning through these last 15 or so years in the design process, and to understand how can we design things more sustainably. And that has spiraled into trying to find ways to intervene in complex social problems.
What might you be working on now that is about intervening in some of the complexities or the problems of food systems?
So I was invited by a colleague of mine in Kwantlen Polytechnic University, Ken Mullinix, to do the community engagement part of a very large project in Vancouver Island, to ask people what you want your future to be in terms of food systems, food security, food diversity, culture, life in general. And my role in it will be, let's say, leading all the engagement with people, so basically running workshops, asking questions, and coming up with some ideas on what that future may be.
So my question to a lot of the other colleagues who are here at the Flow meeting has been, what is one of your favorite aspects of the food culture in the place that you come from? But since you come from so many places, what are some of the things that you see in food culture around the world that have particularly appealed to you?
So as a Mexican, obviously the Mexican food is something that makes me very proud, and I love it. But in every single place that I've lived, I have noticed with time how little aspects of that culture becomes part of you, So right now, how I cook, how I drink coffee, how I, cook my pasta, and how I, make my breakfast, and tiny little details that I have picked up from many different cultures. And that's what I love about food, is just how it represents cultures and identities, and how you can somehow, at some degree, kind of make your own make them your own, I guess.
So as a designer, this next question is probably quite antithetical to the way you practice, but if you had a magic wand and you could just change something without having to design an intervention or a system or a tool to make it the thing better, what would you change with magic if you could when it comes to food?
I don't know. The thing that worries me the most is access to it. So, one thing that is really troubling me now is olive oil. Olive oil is part of, again, another aspect of my culture that I feel very attached to. And there has been some droughts and some things that have made the harvesting of olives really bad this year. And if I had a magic wand, it's just get rid of all those things. No, it's chocolate, it's olive oil, and it's all these things that are so important as part of these cultures and identity that now have been affected or threatened. I would like just to get all that threat and all that fear just like.
So remove all the threats and fear related to climate change, largely?
Yeah, that's central of my work, so it's very hard for me not to think about it.
Do you have a favorite food expression in any of the languages that you speak or have come in contact with?
It's hard to switch languages, so let me think in English.
So I know in Spanish we say buen provecho for bon appétit. Is there a version of that in Mexico that's a bit different?
Yeah, in Mexico we have this very strange custom of making diminutives, like making the word like tiny. So it's provechito, que aproveche, aprovechito. I don't know why.
Provechito.
Provechito.
Gracias.
De nada.
One of the things I found most intriguing about the Flow Partnership meeting and these short conversations with the project participants is the diversity of food cultures and challenges around the world. Yes, we are all facing issues related to politics and climate change and exploitation and hunger, but at the same time, these common threats also manifest themselves so differently in different places. And the traditions and tastes and habits that those places represent also vary pretty widely. That's why I think that the Flow Project is so important. By sharing ideas and practices from different regions, we can make each region stronger and more adapted to transforming how food is produced and sold and eaten at the larger scale. Same for making better policies and governmental structures that support fairness and justice and well-being. We do have a long way to go, but I really feel there's great promise in diversity and collaboration. So that's it for this Flow Partnership episode of Making a Meal of It. Thank you to my guests Anne-Marie Aubert, Alison Blay-Palmer, Lillith Brook, Rachel Carey, Nicole Claasen, Laura Gómez, Samuel Gudu, Victor Martinez, Kevin Morgan, Chatura Pulasinghage, and Elodie Valette, as well as much, much gratitude to the fabulous Annalisa Aunio and Dawson College in Montreal for hosting us. Next week, we return to the usual Making a Meal of It format, including the food questionnaire and an edition of Stick This in Your Mouth with Maxime. Our theme is meat, and of course power, politics, and carbon footprints. Talk to you then.